Alright, you guys, welcome back into another One Piece video. Today, we got the post-game show for Chapter 1154. Just in case this is your first time here, how this works is that I like to go through the comment section of the previous video and just read and see what everybody's talking about. What are the main theories, the takeaways, the opinions? I gotta see all of it, man, and you guys are here with me on that journey. So, with that being said, hopping into it, we got the top comment right here. Imagine next chapter, Rox looks at a giant attacking him and coldly says, chop chop. What is that? Oh, you have like the finger emojis there too. Chop chop, and the guy gets diced, bro. My god. I've been seeing this theory float around everywhere. Rox Xebec has the Barbar no Mi. He's the best version of Buggy. And I'm gonna be honest, I'm not mad at it. As somebody who does indulge in theories from time to time, I love this idea because people were wondering, man, when will Buggy actually use his devil fruit in a significant way? When will Buggy awaken? When will Buggy show us the true potential of the chop chop fruit? Honestly, there's a really good chance that Buggy might never show that to us in the entire story, and that's fine. But if that's not going to happen, why not show us an old generation character that can? And I do think Rox is a great candidate for that. And I'm going to be honest, out of all the theories out there about Rox having a devil fruit, I think the chop chop fruit is my favorite. It's all the way up there right next to the Yami Yami no Mi. I think the Yami Yami no Mi makes the most sense because Blackbeard was actively after that devil fruit. And we don't know why. We don't know who instilled the mindset into Blackbeard that he needed the Yami Yami no Mi, but maybe it's because of Rox. Maybe Rox had that in the past, so Blackbeard, being a mirror image of Rox Xebec and being his son, wanted Daddy's devil fruit too. So I think the Yami Yami makes the most sense, but I gotta admit, if we were going with what is the most fun option, 1,000,000%, it's the Chop Chop devil fruit. This comment right here says, what if the king that Harald was cool with was Rox, king of Beehive Island, and we know he wasn't a pirate or wanted before that reverie. Harald snuck in as the bodyguard of Rox, and a celestial dragon wanted him as a slave, and Rox hit him, which caused an admiral to appear, but then Rox bodied that admiral just like that. That's why Rox shows up immediately asking for Harald. I do think this could work. The one downside to this, though, is that at the very end of the chapter, the narrator box says that Harald spotted this man at the reverie. It almost seems like that was their first time meeting, right? If Harald went with Rox Xebec to the reverie, it would say, oh, King Harald went to the reverie with this man, not, oh, King Harald spotted this man. Of course, we need to wait for the Viz translations to come out to accurately tell what they're saying here. But at least according to TCB and OP Scan's translations, it does seem like the reverie was King Harald's first time seeing and spotting this man. But I like the idea, though. I do like the idea. And we do have to explain how Rox Xebec knows that King Harald is here. All right, because imagine King Harald shows up to the reverie with another king. Why would Rox come to Elbaf looking for King Harald? Why would he not go to the other kingdom, the kingdom that King Harald went to the reverie with? Maybe Rox did that originally, and then after he, used process of elimination, he's like, okay, if he's not there, then he's got to be an Elbaf. Which is kind of interesting when you really think about it, right? 8 years have passed since that reverie, and now Rox is finally coming here to Elbaf. Kind of odd. Why wait 8 years? Why after all this time? What was Rox doing for the past 8 years? Picking up Whitebeard? Picking up Shiki? Picking up Stussy? We don't know. This one says, I love how Xebec says yeah at the end of his sentences like Blackbeard does, yeah? Like father, like son, bro. Hey, I just did it. I feel like a lot of people say yeah at the end of sentences, or at least everybody has like a tick that they add to the end. Every now and then, you'll notice that I say right a lot. Oh, I like how Xebec says yeah, right? I like to drop that. I'm trying to quit the habit, like a smoker with bad lungs. I'm trying to finally kick that to the curb. This one says, Whitebeard letting Blackbeard go, telling Ace to stop. This reveal adds so much more to that now. That is true, right? It's funny because when we have the Shanks and Whitebeard interaction, Whitebeard is like, oh, I'm not gonna stop Ace. Teach committed an unforgivable sin. But then we see the other side of that flashback where Blackbeard initially killed Thatch and Ace wanted to go, and Whitebeard was like, hey, I got a really bad feeling about this, but if you want to avenge him, I guess you should. It's kind of funny, man. And of course, like I said, I do think that Whitebeard knew all along that Blackbeard is actually Rox's son. There's no way he did it, you know? You'd have to be literally blind to not see the resemblances. And the thing is that their design is so unique too. It's not like background fodder character number 5 and 4. No. Rox and Blackbeard are pretty much one-to-one, brother. Right now, one thing I'm really hoping we do get, and I don't know how we'd get it because Whitebeard is dead, but I wish we could actually see what was going through Whitebeard's mind at the time. Like, imagine that happened, and then we see another POV, but from Whitebeard, and he's like, hey, this is bad. You know, like, I remember back in the day, Rox did kind of something similar. Like, ooh, is this Rox taking over? Oh, no, Rox is a Lineage. He's the evil D-Clan member. Yeah, if only Whitebeard was still here, man. If only Whitebeard was still here. I mean, hell, this is a popular fan theory, at least back in the day, but there was the chatter going around that if Brook were to awaken his devil fruit and awaken the revive fruit, maybe he could bring back the souls of old characters. Not permanently, not like we're rezzing the dead like Ekomoria, but more so to have a conversation. Would that actually be too crazy? Let me know in the comments down below. This one says, if Galley-La built Pluton, then maybe Loki is the one who can control it with his eyes. Similar to Shirahoshi and the Sea Kings, this could mean that Loki and Shirahoshi are the sovereigns the Harley was talking about. That could be true. And of course, you know, I feel like if this is the case, it does make sense because not just Shirahoshi and the Sea Kings, but think about Uranus. If the world government has Uranus, well, they needed the Mother Flame to activate it, to power it up, to destroy Lelucia. So yeah, if each and every ancient weapon needs a power source, then maybe that's the case here. Maybe Pluton really does need an ancient giant like Loki, a giant with those eyes. And plus, with Galley-La, another thing to take note of is that they're comprised of ancient giants. If you're an ancient giant making a ancient weapon ship, why not keep it in the bloodline? Why not? You know, maybe to all of Elbaf, Loki's eyes are an anomaly, but maybe to Galley-La, that's something they know about. Maybe they look at Loki and they're like, oh, finally, a kid with those eyes. You can commandeer Pluton. Let's go to Wano. I could see it, man. I could see it. That is a really good theory. I like that. Some people think that Buggy D. Clown and Marshall D. Teach are half-brothers due to their father's eyes and prominent eyelashes by their own opinions. Since we're talking about half-brothers surrounding Loki and Harden, wouldn't that be easily possible? In this One Piece universe, we will most likely learn more about and who are the half-siblings. Are there any more half-siblings besides Harden and Loki? Biological siblings. In Buggy's case, he could potentially be an adopted brother in contrast to Shanks rather than his biological brother. If these two dumbasses end up as brothers, I'm calling this the most peak manga ever. Yeah, I do like the Buggy and Blackbeard connection. Of course, like you said, because it would contrast Shanks, right? Shanks is the adopted son of Roger. Buggy could be the abandoned son of Roxy Xebec. I like that a lot. And the thing is too, right? Whenever we bring up people being related to another character, we often assume that they're gonna get crazy buffs because of that lineage. Personally, I would like it if Buggy stayed an idiot, for a lack of a better word. You know, I hope Buggy stays at his power level. Maybe he has like 1 or 2 glimpses of geniusness, but I do like where Buggy's at right now. And if this is the case, I would be okay with it being an SBS drop. Maybe in a random SBS or data book or Vivid card, Oda's like, hey, you guys think that they're related? Yeah, they are. Yeah, it's not supposed to matter too much, but here you go. Yeah, you're looking at Rox D. Buggy, which would be kind of crazy. Good name, Rox D. Buggy, huh? This one says, Sai, you have to remember, we read One Piece from the third POV. We are hindsighted, and so the actual characters in the story don't know about the future, nor are they aware of every character's flaws. Harald, being called an absent pops, is like calling a war soldier away from home an absentee. He isn't just indulging in his personal desires, but building relationships for the better of his nation, and we see the results of that this very chapter. So please remember, the little truths we know about every character, he has no idea. That is true. You are not wrong. This is from an outside POV, but I feel like most people, you know, just to double down on where I'm at, or at least to explain my stance in this video, but I feel like if Harald really just spent a little bit of time with Loki, he'd be able to tell something's up. I mean, he already called out the scratches. You know, like, hey, Loki, you're kind of scratched up. Loki, you're not smiling at all. Of course, he kind of explains that one because his mom died. I think that's very reasonable. But as far as the scratches and the eye bandages go, I can't excuse that, you know what I mean? Especially when his solution is to drop Loki off with Estrid's older brother. Like, I don't know, like, what about Ida? What about Hyrule? What about just taking him on diplomacy missions? Because I do think that is a valid solution, you know? Harald is an ancient giant. He's going around establishing connections, trade, you know, showing them that giants aren't all about war. Well, a great way to do that is to bring your son on those trips, right? A great way to build Loki up as the future Prince of Elbaf and the future King of Elbaf would be to show him what the world is all about, in my opinion, right? Of course, maybe calling Harald an absent father is a little bit too far, but you gotta admit, Harald didn't really try to be a father at all. And you could even look back at Harald's past and say that's the reason why, right? Harald had Hyrule, and because of Harald's position, he couldn't bring Hyrule into the palace. So Hyrule doesn't really know what it's like to be a dad. And then plus, when we started this flashback, Harald was a punk, right? You know, look at Harald 2 chapters ago. I couldn't really see him being a good dad anyways. So yeah, maybe it's too harsh to call Harald an absent pops, but you gotta admit, Harald did not put in a lot of effort into Hyrule's development, nor is he putting in a lot of effort into Loki's development. He's mainly prioritizing Elbaf as a whole, which, like I said, that's still good, but you gotta admit, he's not exactly the best dad. I don't think Harald would end up on a bad dad list next to Judge or Yassop or somebody else, but at the same time, I don't think he's gonna end up in the top 3 list of best dads. Just because we see that he probably could have fixed Loki if he just spent a week with him, or if he brought Loki with him. I mean, hell, does Harald, in this chapter, even know what's underneath the bandages? Because the guard said that Loki has an eye disease, and Harald just accepted that. Did he even check Loki's eyes? Does he know? Will he find out later? Like, because we're asking a simple question like that, I think that just goes to show that Harald is putting in the bare minimum into Loki. This one says, I think the reason Rox went to Elbaf to look for Harald was because he was recruiting crewmates. For whatever reason, Harald didn't join, but Rox found Big Mom instead. That is true. You know, I do like the idea that Rox came here to recruit Harald. I think that is very plausible, right? You see an ancient giant the size of Harald at the Reverie? Yeah. I want that guy, right? Maybe that's like a celestial dragon mindset, like, hey, giant? Whoa, yeah, come join my crew. But I think this is plausible. We do know, though, that Harald was not present at God Valley. He wasn't. No, he wasn't. But he could be, right? We do know that Oda likes to hide things like that all the time. So maybe Harald is showing up on a second ship. Maybe Harald is on the island, we just don't see him in Kuma's POV. That could be plausible. I mean, hell, even during Kuma's flashback, we didn't even see Rox in that flashback. So yeah, maybe Harald is just hiding in the background somewhere. But overall, though, yeah, I don't think Harald will join. As far as Rox finding Big Mom, you know, a lot of people are saying this, right? Rox came here for also Big Mom. By this point of the story, Big Mom shouldn't be in Elbaf anymore. Big Mom gets kicked out of Elbaf after she kills Elder Yorl. So Big Mom should be at the Whole Cake Island of that era. She should not be here in Elbaf. But maybe he heard a story about Big Mom, and that's why he came here initially, though. I could see that. I could see that. This one says, Rox had the chop fruit. Yeah, fun theory. I freaking love the panel of Whitebeard, Shiki, Stussy, and Xebec walking towards Loki. It's pretty cold. It was a really cold panel. And I also love, I don't know, it's something about old Whitebeard and the fact that he's dead right now that makes me really appreciate every extra panel of Whitebeard we get. It's kind of like the same feeling you get with Ace. Like, whenever we see an Ace panel in 2024, 2025, I'm like, oh, dude, yes. You know, I love it, man. I love it. Whoa, there's a big one right here. They say, I believe that Teach, as the heir of Rox, doesn't merely aim to complete his father's plan of becoming king of the world. His dream is deeper and more complex than that. And in this, it parallels Luffy's unknown dream, the one he told his crew, which Usopp said was impossible to achieve unless he became Pirate King. I think this is a representation of Teach as well. He doesn't want to become king of the world just for the sake of power itself. Rather, ruling the world and eliminating all obstacles are means to achieve his ultimate dream, which I believe is related to the primordial world mentioned in the mural of 1138. My view is this: if Imu wants to preserve her rule and maintain this fragile world, parentheses, the third world, through iron and fire, and Luffy as the embodiment of Joy Boy will play a role in building another world, the New World, governed by freedom for all, then Teach wants to return the world to its original state, the first world. I quote from the mural, "For when the god of the sun appeared, the god of the earth grew angry alongside the serpent of hell and plunged the world into darkness and death. Thus, Teach's dream is for the age of darkness to reign once more. Perhaps the Yami Yami no Mi itself was a manifestation of the desire for darkness, the first world to return. If Teach's dream aligns with the original desire behind the existence of the dark fruit, that could be the reason for awakening the fruit and expanding his ability to spread darkness across the world. Even if he doesn't awaken his fruit, I believe Teach's pursuit of the legendary ancient weapons is to use them to expand the power of his darkness and quake abilities globally." I like that. I don't think this is bad at all, right? I do like the idea of correlating Emu, Luffy, and Blackbeard to different eras of the world depicted in the Harley text. I think that's fun. I guess it kind of just boils down to, what would this even look like, right? Let's say Blackbeard achieves his goal. He sinks the world into darkness. Does the sun just never shine? Is that the goal there? What about the people? Will he just straight up kill everybody? Are they going to just end up existing and living within Blackbeard's liberation or dark hole ability? That's kind of where I'm at right now. I do like this though. Don't get me wrong. I do like the idea that Blackbeard's trying to return them to the first world. You know, he's trying to restore Pangea in a way, which I'm all about. Oda confirmed right away that Teach is Xebec's son, but with that face, there was no way to hide it anymore. He also already established that he's stronger than an admiral. Did Whitebeard know that Blackbeard was the son of his former captain? It would be very strange if he didn't know. Did Blackbeard change his name from Rocks to Marshall, just like how Ace changed his from Goal to Portgas? Is Blackbeard's mother a D like Rouge? Wow, hitting us with a lot here, huh? So let's start with this first one. Yes, there was no way to hide that Rocks was actually Blackbeard's dad. I'm glad that Oda cleared this up, because if Oda didn't say that Rocks is Blackbeard's dad, we would have so much infighting in the community. Because while it would be obvious, right, since they look so strikingly similar, that they're father and son, you would have people saying, oh no, that's a coincidence, right? All One Piece characters kind of look like that. So because Oda brought this in and dropped it right away, we don't have to worry about, oh, is this Blackbeard's dad, or do they just look the same? Is this the One Piece effect? Yeah, he cleared up this conversation real quick. So as far as Rocks being stronger than an admiral, yes. I'm curious though, what admiral did he beat? I doubt we're ever gonna learn more about this admiral in the story. This feels like an SBS drop. Like, oh, Oda sensei, can you tell us more about the admiral that Rocks defeated? And then Oda draws up like a little sketch and he's like, oh, here's, you know, the brown admiral. You know, he has the rock no Mi. What's a brown element? Mud? Yeah, he's got the mud Logia. Rocks beat that guy black and blue. Oh, the mud admiral was very powerful, but Rocks bested him. And they weren't holding back. I could see that happening. That sounds like an SPS, honestly. Did Whitebeard know that Blackbeard was the son of his former captain? I think yes. It would be really strange if he didn't know. Exactly, right? It would be really strange if Whitebeard did not put the pieces together. This is an interesting one. Did Blackbeard change his last name from Rocks to Marshall? Just like Ace changing his name from Gold to Portgas. I think so. I mean, this has to be the case, right? The father's last name usually takes over, so he should be Rocks D. Teach, but he's not. He's Marshall D. Teach. So Blackbeard knowingly took on his mother's last name. As far as why, I'm assuming it's because he wanted to hide his identity, which is odd when you really think about it. Yeah, because we saw Blackbeard at a very early age when Whitebeard picked him up. So by that point in time, Blackbeard already knew to hide his name. Interesting. Another route we could go is that Blackbeard just really adores his mom. So that is why he went with Marshall. But that also doesn't make a lot of sense because he loves his daddy, bro. I mean, he named his ship after Xebec, right? I think that just goes to show that he really likes rocks. Maybe he named himself Marshall for his mom, and then he just named his ship Xebec so that he gets like the best of both worlds. That could be it. And then of course it could just be because he wants to live incognito. I think that's like the most logical answer. But yeah, you know, Blackbeard from a very early age knew exactly what he was plotting. Is Blackbeard's mother a D like Rouge? So this right here, it doesn't have to be the case, but because Rocks and Roger are rivals, I'm just gonna say yeah, sure. You know, there's no reason why this would be bad, right? If Blackbeard's mom was also a D, Yeah, it could be doubled up, just like Ace, right? Ace has a Gold D Roger, and he also has Port Gas D Rouge. Yeah, double up the Ds, man. Give us the double Ds. Love the double Ds. The Frozen Giants are at Punk Hazard also had the Galley-La tattoo. Yes. It's one of those small details that you won't really notice unless you know what you're looking for. But yeah, I did see somebody post that online, and that's honestly pretty damn crazy. This one says, I hate them, but I'm still curious if Oda will ever reveal what's the deal with the Yeti Cool Brothers. Wow. A Yeti Cool Brother reference in 2025, huh? I don't know. I don't know if Oda will ever reveal what's going on with these guys. You know, I want to see what their faces look like. I want to see if there's more giants like them. Where are they today even? And what's funny too is that I think Oda revealed that the Yeti Cool Brothers are in their 20s, which by giant standards, that's like the same age as Colin almost. And it's like, yo, these guys are bounty hunting at that early of an age? Their skill cap, man, their potential, it's high. It is high. Prime Yeti Cool Brothers? Ooh, we might have to watch out for those guys. I have a strong suspicion that Blackbeard's Devil Fruit was originally Rox D. Xebec's. That is why he so diligently sought out the Yami Yami no Mi specifically. That is what I agree with as well. Like I said, I think this is the most logical answer, but you gotta admit, the Bar no Mi, that's the fun one, man. That is the fun one. You know, strict mom versus cool uncle. Jarl's wisdom this week with the Galley-La statement reminds me that to the Giants, the Void Century wasn't that long ago, just 3 to 4 generations, as compared to most races' countless generations since the Void Century. The Elders and Elbaf know some things, and I think we need to pay attention to their statements about the past. Yes, and I think this is what's so odd too, right? Since the Void Century should only be 3 to 4 generations ago, I'm surprised nobody's really talked about it yet, right? Like, to be honest, man, that should be like Loki's grandpa, right? That should be Jarl's dad, maybe. Well, no, not Jarl's dad, but Jarl's grandpa, which should still be alive by the time Jarl popped out. So yeah, hopefully we get something from the village elders if they're still around. Maybe there's some books about the Void Century, but would that be cheating? That could be cheating, all right? It's all about the adventure. It's all about finding the poneglyphs. If we just ask a giant, like, hey, can you tell us your grandpa's World War II stories? Maybe that's cheating. Maybe that'd be too easy. Ors might be part of that frozen giant army. Chopper said he was stupid and died because it was cold after looking at his body. That could be the case. How long ago did Ors get killed? Because if I recall correctly, Ors is like 400 plus years ago. Okay, I'm looking at it right now. Ors was an infamous giant born over 500 years ago prior to the current storyline. Galley-La seems recent. According to the translations, it seems like Galley-La just recently got frozen because of their letter. You know, obviously if we're pairing the letter and the frozen giant army to the same thing, then it seems like that's very recent. Whereas Ors, like I said, that was 500 years ago. That's a tough one. And then why would Ors be the only survivor? And then also, if Ors was a part of that frozen giant army, we would have to explain why Moria didn't get the rest of them. Maybe Moria just wanted the biggest one, and that's why he took Ors and left the rest behind? Yeah, that's a little bit tough. And then I do wonder, who froze Ors, right? Who had Aokiji's Devil Fruit in the past? Who had these powers, brother? I have a theory. Jarl told Harald he heard about the army of giants frozen somewhere, while Chopper told the crew that Ors died 500 years ago. Oh my god, is it the same thing? Wow, it's like the same person. I mean, it's not the same person, but you know, the same mindset. Couldn't Ors have been frozen with that army? And Moria found the freezing site only to take Ors' corpse. Even Oda hinted at in this chapter cover, where the hero's grave, visited by Yamato, belonged to someone who grew up in the West Blue and was buried in Wano. This parallels Thriller Bark Island housing Ors' frozen body, originally from the West Blue. It became a ship sailing to the Grand Line. Could the Galley-La Group have transformed the island into a vessel to transport something important? Somehow, they crossed the Red Line as ancient giants and legendary shipwrights, so skilled that Ors himself was called the Continent Puller, meaning they could easily relocate islands, but the WG kidnapped them to weaponize their craft like the weapon tested on the Lucia, and enslave them for colossal projects like the Tequila Wolf Bridge. After their capture, the island drifted alone until Moria found it. Those giant shadows the crew saw near Thriller Bark are Oda's hints about the Galley-La Group, linking them to Onigashima. Isn't it possible that they shaped the island into the emblem of the ancient giants, and that Onigashima's distinctive sword belonged to one of them? Furthermore, weren't they the ones who hid Pluton within Wano, and then raised its towering walls? Most crucially, Since the indestructible poneglyphs were crafted in Wano, this proves their creators possessed transcendent craftsmanship. Isn't it highly likely that the Galley-La Group made them? Parentheses, I mean they crafted the stones, though the Kozuki family inscribed their contents, especially since Jarl confirmed they traveled worldwide. Perhaps after leaving Wano, they distributed the poneglyphs across every sea as a map to the world's long-forgotten history. Yep, I can pretty much see all of this, right? I think it's pretty on the money. Maybe not the Moria part. I feel like Moria is the one who really just cooked up that ship, mainly because of the jaw mechanic, right? That feels very horror-themed, and I can't imagine the Galley-La Group saying, hey guys, to be able to let pirate ships in here, let's construct a giant mouth, right? I feel like that's Moria's MO, but outside of that, though, I agree with pretty much all of it. I do think that the ancient giants were the ones who built Pluton and dropped it within Wano. And then Onigashima could have been a tribute or a home to Galley-La while they were there. And that's why it does have the Oni skull to it, right? Maybe that's just the ancient giant skull that they crafted up. And then the sword, of course, I think that parallels the sword that we see in Elbaf. So yeah, I think that's pretty dang good. As far as them building the walls in Wano, I'm not too sure about that one. You know, because it's like a rock wall, right? If it was like an actual wall, I'd be like, yeah, they did that. But because the walls are actually mountainous, I would say that maybe just the work of a devil fruit. Like maybe somebody had Pika's devil fruit in the past or Avalo Pizarro's devil fruit, and they simply raised the walls naturally, rather than Galley-La actually man-making it. Ida couldn't have raised Loki because she is a lowborn, so it's like Game of Thrones, if you watch that. Sometimes the politics of the realm overrule the king's power. Loki's mother comes from a prestigious Elbaf family, so her brother being the choice for Loki's caretaker within the castle makes sense within a feudal sense. I agree. You know, I think it definitely makes sense that Estrid's brother took over Loki's care, but I'd also say that Ida is definitely the better choice. And the thing is, you know, we have the village elders. We don't even know where they're at. You know, those elders we saw last chapter, where are they today? What were they doing during the famine? Are they even still around? You know, that is a genuine question. And with how King Harald saved Elbaf from famine and all this destruction, at what point do you say, hey, maybe we let the rules slide this one time, right? For Loki's development, he needs a mom. Sure, let's give him to Ida, even though she is a lowborn. Or maybe we make an exception and Ida can temporarily stay at the castle while Loki's growing up. Because let's be real here, you know, everybody needs a mom. You know, moms are very important for child development. So leaving Loki to an estranged older brother, not estranged, but you know what I mean, to Estrid's older brother, kind of an odd choice. Kind of an odd choice. This one says, in my opinion, I think Colin will idolize Luffy in a similar way to Loki and Rox by the end of Elbaf. Yep, both Colin and Loki are similar in ways that they are both the strongest kids in their generation, and their dads were legends in their own right. With Colin idolizing the sun god, Rox could have potentially been the inverse to that, similarly to Blackbeard as the god of destruction. In my opinion, I can see a future Colin being the same level as Loki. Okay, that last part's kind of crazy. Colin being the same level as Loki in the future. Yeah, I mean, time is crazy, right? If Colin really does lock in, anything's possible. I can't deny that. But just thinking about Loki, though, I'm like, man, he's a monster, dude. The ancient giant blood, the eyes, the legendary devil fruit. Yikes, you know, Colin's got a long way to go. It's like how Kobe wants to surpass Luffy and how Kobe wants to defeat Luffy and get the One Piece. It's like, okay, good luck, man. You know, I think Kobe can do it eventually, but he's gonna have to train. You know, he's gonna have to train. As far as Colin idolizing Luffy, I think that's kind of already happened. I'm gonna be honest, I think that kind of already happened the minute when Luffy used Gear 3rd to beat him. And then, if Luffy goes on to save Elbaf later, you know, when Luffy defeats Emu, Gunko, Sommers, Killingham, it's a shoo-in, right? I mean, hey, Colin's dad couldn't do it. I mean, technically, he probably could have if the God Knights didn't have Colin hostage, but he didn't, you know? So Luffy doing things that his dad couldn't, you know, one of the best warriors in Elbaf, yeah, Colin will easily idolize Luffy. This one says, screw all the people of Elbaf for bullying Loki. They're as bad as the people of Konoha, if not worse. Oh, wow, what a throwback. Konoha, huh? Same thing with Harald. He may have been a good king, but he was a neglectful dad. The people of Elbaf. I can't blame the people of Elbaf, I'm gonna be honest. Mainly because at that point in time, Estrid was his #1 op, you know? The queen was whispering dirty little nothings into your ear, saying that her child is cursed. The reason you and your family are starving, the reason you're fighting is because of this kid. It's tough, right? And then plus you look at Loki and he is automatically different. And we don't know when Loki started going down to the Sunrealm village as well, right? Maybe for the villagers, their first instance of Loki and seeing Loki is him releasing animals to attack your village. Like maybe there were villagers who didn't believe in Loki's curse. Maybe there were villagers who liked Loki and liked the idea of having a unique prince. And then Loki comes down and says, kill all the weaklings, right? So I agree with this, but I also disagree. It's just tough because we didn't get much interaction between Loki and the villagers before Loki started just attacking them. We know Estrid hated Loki. We know that Estrid's brother hated Loki. But as far as the guards go, like, you know, when Estrid brought up the curse in this chapter, the guard was like, hey, you know, maybe it's a coincidence. So not everybody in Elbaf disliked Loki. So, you know, I kind of give this one some leeway. As far as the neglectful dad portion, I already spoke my piece earlier on that one. This one says, Rox is another character with a mark on dash near his left eye. Luffy, Garp, Dragon, Shanks, Wiper. I'm glad you put Wiper in here. Zoro, Rayleigh, and now Rox. There may be something I'm forgetting, but there is definitely a connection there. I think that this is Oda edging closer and closer to showing us who the guy with the eye patch really is. A long time, very long time ago, Oda released, it wasn't an interview, I believe it was a Shonen Jump Festa message. And Oda said that the minute you guys see a pirate with an eye patch, you should know at that point that the story is nearing its end. We still have yet to meet an eye-patched pirate in the entire story. I think as we're going on, like I said, we're getting closer and closer to that person. The marks are getting closer and closer to the eye, dude. I mean, this one's just right here. Just put a little circle around it. Boom. That's an eye patch, brother. But yeah, I think the markings on the left eye are really interesting. You know, it almost makes you wonder why there's not a lot of markings on the right eye. Maybe there's actually gonna be a lot of symbolism with the left eye once we hit the Void Century. And then, of course, I think somebody went through the volume covers. But in a lot of volume covers, you have characters covering their left eye. I don't know if that's like true or not. Maybe it's the right eye, but I think it's the left, you know. But because you mentioned Xebec in the left eye, I think it's the left eye. Yeah, there's a lot of characters just covering their eyes, closing their eyes, and I think something will come out of that. You know, Oda's teasing something, brother. He really is. But with that being said, y'all, thank you so much for being here. I really freaking appreciate it. Of course, thank you for commenting on the previous video and watching that as well. You know, I always have to say this, but without your guys' comments and feedback and opinions and theories, we wouldn't be able to have this video today. We wouldn't have this conversation, this back and forth, which is what I really enjoy. But yeah, let me see here. Is there anything I want to plug? Yeah, there is. I always do. I do got to plug my side channels. I do have a gaming channel here on YouTube at Syvduck. So feel free to check that out, please, if you have the time. And also, I stream almost every other night on Twitch at Syvduck as well. So feel free to check that out if you want to say hello. I usually play a lot of horror games. I don't really do much One Piece related stuff on there. So you're coming to shoot a theory at me, probably not the best place. But also, in the same vein, I do tend to go on a lot of One Piece tangents, for better or worse. I also have an anime reaction channel titled Somnus Reacts here on YouTube. I react to One Piece, Dandadan, and pretty much any other anime that just catches my eye. So yeah, feel free to check that out below as well. And that's pretty much it. Thank you guys for being here. I appreciate it. And I'll see you next time.